Hello, everyone. We will wait a few minutes for people to join the webinar, and then we will get started. In the meantime, you can let us know in the chat where you are tuning in from. I am at the office that TMA has in Columbia, Maryland, and that is where I'm broadcasting from. I'd love to know where you are. Okay. Hello and welcome to TMA's. Hold on, I'm gonna edit that out because I do not have me spotlighted now. There we go. All right. Hello and welcome to TMA's Empowerment Clinic series, where we talk about topics that can enhance or improve your quality of life. Today, we are talking about patient involvement in research, and I've got questions for you. Do you read myositis research reports and think this is nothing like what I live with? This is not surprising since doctors, health professionals, and researchers know an awful lot about myositis, but they don't know what it's like to live with myositis. You as a patient or as a loved one of someone living with myositis do have valuable firsthand experience with this disease, and there are ways you can contribute this experiential knowledge to research efforts. In this webinar, TMA medical advisor and myositis patient Ingrid de Groot will share her experiences as a patient research partner in the OMERACT Myositis Working Group, which is looking into the life impact of myositis. She will discuss her role, responsibilities, the challenges, and the value it has brought to her. And then we will go into a Q&A. And if you have a question for Ingrid, you can put that in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Ingrid de Groot holds degrees in child life therapy, the study of psychological well-being in chronically or terminally ill or hospitalized children, social work, and counseling. Her research and educational interest in IIMs sprung from her own diagnosis of dermatomyositis in 2006. Her research targets outcomes and outcomes measures, quality of life, targeted rehabilitation, and exercise in IIMs, patient empowerment, and driving a global program on the development and implementation of physical and psychological resilience strategies in NMDs, including IIMs. So Ingrid, thank you so much for being here with us today. And I am adding you as a spotlight, and feel free to say hi to everyone, and then you can share your slides and get going.
Hi, everyone. Yes, hi. My name is Ingrid de Groot, and I'm talking to you from the Netherlands. And it's 6 o'clock here, or some time of 6 p.m. So I'm glad to see some people of you during noon, I think it is, in your place. And today I will share with you, like Rachel said, some personal experiences as a patient research partner. And I will do so with about 18 slides, I think. So if you do have a question, like Rachel said, put it in the Q&A. We hold on to them till the end, but if it's like really important to get through the slides, just let us know, and I'll answer your question as soon as I can, or I get the question from Rachel. So I'm going to share my screen now.
Thank you. And while you're sharing your screen, I want everyone to know that this meeting presentation is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel the 1st of September.
Okay, so here we go. This is me. My name is Ingrid de Groot, and although being introduced as a member of the medical advisory board, as a social worker, and a member board, I'm also a woman living with myositis. I was diagnosed with dermatomyositis in 2006, and I lost my job because of this in 2015. And ever since, I have been a patient research partner and a patient advocate. So today we will talk about how we as patients can contribute to research. And the famous slogan, "Nothing about us without us," is popular among patients for a reason. We want research in myositis to be about us, to focus on symptoms that impact our lives most severely, to talk about the symptoms and the burdens that are invisible to the outside world. And we all agree that by now doctors and researchers know an awful lot about myositis. However, all this knowledge comes from textbooks, from clinical practice, from lab results, etc. What they do not know is how it feels to live with myositis day in and day out. And as patients, we do. And this lived experience is valuable to research. Now, wouldn't it be wonderful if this experiential knowledge was not only acknowledged, but if we were to share this with researchers as well? And I can tell you on the positive side, this is increasingly the case. So today I will share with you my experience as a patient research partner for the OMERACT Myositis Group. For those who do not know OMERACT, and I guess that's most of you, this is a global non-profit, volunteer-driven organization committed to improving outcomes for people living with autoimmune and musculoskeletal conditions through advancing the design and quality of clinical studies. And they do this by developing core outcome sets, which means basically identifying patient and disease relevant outcomes and corresponding measurement instruments. And working groups, and that's quite unique, consist of clinicians, healthcare professionals, researchers, and very importantly, patients. Here you see the photo of part of our working group at the OMERACT conference in Australia in 2018. Our group has 60 members: rheumatologist, neurologist, an occupational therapist, a physiotherapist, methodologist, and 2 patients or patient research partners. In the front you see Catherine Sava, she's from the US, and myself in the wheelchair. And together we represent 6 countries on 4 continents. I will start with the key aspect of today's webinar: the patient research partner. In OMERACT terms, this person is a member of a research group who contributes the patient's perspective by collaborating with the researchers as an equal partner. And look out during this presentation for the logo of the 2 talking heads fitting 2 pieces of the puzzle together, because I will use this during the presentation whenever we as patients or research partners played a crucial role. So why this working group? We know that all types of myositis lead to physical impairments and reduced quality of life. Therefore, we need valid and reliable measures to assess patient-reported outcomes in cohort studies and clinical trials. Years ago, the International Myositis Assessment Clinical Studies Group, or IMAX, developed a core outcome set for disease activity and disease damage. This core set focused on pathophysiological outcomes only, for instance, CK levels or muscle strength, etc. But 2 important things were missing. There was no patient input, and life impact of myositis was not part of it. Exactly those 2 things are the aims of the OMERACT Myositis Group. And an important note is that we did not include IBM and JDM in our study because these types of myositis differ too much in disease course, disease damage, etc. I will briefly take you through the history of our work, which started in 2011. So watch out for the PRP logo. So first we needed to dive into the scientific literature to find which outcomes and outcome measures were used in myositis research until then, and more importantly, what was missing. This was done by the professionals, but in the next step, step 2, we, the patient research partners, stepped in. We had to identify domains or themes described by patients as relevant to their quality of life or life impact. Therefore, we conducted 11 focus groups with over 60 patients from the United States, Sweden, and South Korea. 2 facilitators asked the patients to describe what their day with myositis looked like and which myositis symptoms had the biggest impact on their daily life. The result was a list of over 100 important domains, which we then had to analyze for doubles, for overlapping ones, etc. This process is called thematic saturation, and after this we ended up with 24 candidate domains. The PRP logo is here because we played a crucial role in deciding on the questions for the interviews for the focus groups, and because we were indispensable in analyzing the domains. For instance, many patients in the focus group mentioned things like muscle trembling, muscle shaking, etc., which the clinicians in our group decided to be tremors, which is a neurological symptom in itself. And I disagreed by saying that from my personal experience, I would say people probably meant the trembling or shaking as a result of muscle fatigue, which is really a different thing. And after discussing this, we decided to stick to my interpretation, and that is how it went into the next steps. Hang on. Oh, sorry. So now we needed to find out which of those 24 domains were the most important, and not only to patients, but also to treating physicians and healthcare professionals treating myositis on a daily basis. We did this through the so-called Delphi survey, which is basically an online questionnaire asking respondents to unanimously rate each domain on a 0 to 10 analog scale. 0 representing not important at all, and 10 representing of utmost importance. And all domains scoring 7 or higher, so very important at least, went to the next round, in which we asked people to rank their personal top 10. Again, all 7+ scores made it into the third and the final round, in which we asked a top 5 ranking. And the contribution of patient research partners was to include also the caregivers of patients from the second round onwards as important stakeholders. Here you see the list after 3 rounds of Delphi. You cannot see it from the table like this, but what you see here has never done before in myositis research. We ended up with over 600 respondents from over 40 countries. And you see those on the top line, it says domain, total N is 638, and N means number of people who participated in the survey, of which 510 were patients, 101 were healthcare providers, and 27 were caregivers. These respondents came over 400 of countries, and this could not have been achieved without the help of patient research partners who reached out to the patient communities through their patient organizations, but also through personal networks. So I'll give you a minute to have a look at the domains, and I'm curious if you recognize some or maybe even many of them from your personal experience. And note that these domains were never ever part of myositis research before. So just have a look. Now we take a closer look at the top of the table, and we see that priorities of patients differ from those of health professionals. And it's exactly that is why it's so important to include patients. There is agreement as well, though, and you see those domains in red. So we agree in the top 5 about muscle symptoms and level of physical activity. The top 5 of patients on the left show muscle symptoms, fatigue, levels of physical activity, medication side effects, and pain as most important, whereas the healthcare providers prioritized muscle symptoms, level of physical activity, lung symptoms, dysphagia, which means swallowing problems, and skin symptoms. And the medication side effects dropped out after this because there's a separate working group within OMERACT addressing that topic. So you won't see that back again in the rest of the slides. So here you see our results in a classic OMERACT figure, and it's depicting an onion in blue. So in the center or core, you see the most important domains with regard to life impact of myositis. And these are the ones that patient voted on. You would recognize them without the medication side effect. And these aim to be mandatory outcomes of future myositis studies. So fatigue, physical activity, pain, and muscle symptoms. And depending on the nature of the study, for instance, when a specific medication is tested, mandatory outcomes could also be joint symptoms, lung symptoms, or skin symptoms. And in the top, you see research agenda, and these are the items that are very important for future research. So now we know what to measure. It is time to find out how to measure. How are we going to measure all these domains? And again, the search started with a systematic literature review on measurement instruments. For each of the 4 domains that are used in research up till that moment. So, for example, questionnaires to measure pain or fatigue. And we ended up with a very high number of instruments. But as you can imagine, not all were a good fit. Here, patient expertise was very much needed again, because there are countless questionnaires for pain, and I mean literally thousands and thousands of them. But which one is a match with pain experienced by us, by myositis patients themselves? Are these the questionnaires focusing on pain intensity, or rather on pain interference or pain frequency? So we decided to choose 2 to 3 instruments per domain. And we developed a survey to ask patients which they thought was the best match of every domain and questionnaires in terms of, for instance, feasibility. So is a questionnaire too long or too short? Do people understand the questions? We also ask what patients exactly mean by muscle symptoms, because that's quite a broad term, and their views on physical activity versus physical function. And at this moment, sorry, I went too quick. We use the chosen instruments in a longitudinal study that is being held in the USA, in Australia, South Korea, Sweden, and the Netherlands. So we're going to see now how they perform in real life and in clinical practice. So we are coming to the end of this brief presentation. It's work in progress, and the main things we talked about today and the things I want to highlight are the roles and the tasks of the patient research partners. So at the very beginning, patient research partners played an important role in interpreting the many domains mentioned in focus groups. And our experiential knowledge was indispensable in assessing specific qualities and characteristics of prompts, questionnaires, etc. We, as patient research partner, formulated working definitions of domains as a starting point for discussion. So at least we knew what we were talking about, and we assisted in developing surveys, like the example I gave you. We got the patient community involved through our respective patient associations, resulting in over 500 patients and carers in over 40 countries to participate. And we also contributed to scientific publications as co-authors. And finally, we helped disseminating the findings through presentations, through newsletters, social post media, etc., and webinars like this one. From my personal experience, I would say the things I like best, or the things that come to my mind as most important, is to collaborate on equal basis with researchers, physicians, and others. And collaborating on equal basis meant for this peer piece must be offered support, and importantly, education, and maybe we can talk about that later. And collaborating on equal basis also means fully participate in all online or in-person meetings, which means that all working group members got the same emails, got the same information, etc. And when we were in an analytic discussion, so analyzing data, the professionals explained in lay language what we are doing, how we were doing, etc. So my role was to ensure the patient perspective was preserved throughout the entire process. And an opportunity and a challenge at the same time was to co-author a publication. But I also did try my luck as a first author, which I will show in the next slide. We involved patients and healthcare professionals and research community through our own networks. And we clearly saw in our findings that all countries represented by a patient research partner scored significantly higher in participation in the Delphi and all the other surveys. And one of my tasks is to keep the patient community updated through, again, newsletters and presentations like this one. And personally, what I'm very grateful for is the personal growth and meaning that I got from this. I developed new skills like writing and presenting, and I got to travel to conferences and medical symposia to talk to clinicians and researchers. So this is one of our several publications of which PRPs were the co-authors. There are our names, Ingrid and Catherine, and also an editorial by Dr. Adam Huber referring to our work as an example of making sure the patient perspective is captured in research. And the Journal of Rheumatology may sound as like a magazine that's not very familiar, but it's a very important scientific journal that is read by many rheumatology people throughout the world. And this is one of this is my personal article, which I wrote as a first author. And it's my personal story of my journey from becoming a patient with myositis to being a patient advocate and patient research partner. And it was published at the end of 23 in the Indian Journal of Rheumatology. For those interested in reading it, please leave your email address in the chat and I will send it to you. And this photo was taken at the Euler Rheumatology Conference in Vienna, Austria last May, to which I was invited as a speaker, which is another example of what being a patient research partner brought to me. So I would like to conclude this presentation by the key takeaways, which would be that patients provide a unique perspective of lived experience or experiential knowledge that is complementary to that of clinicians and researchers. And there is scientific evidence that the relevance and quality of research process and outcomes improve as the result of this patient participation. And finally, engagement of patients strengthen opportunities for dissemination and implementation. So this is what I wanted to tell you. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much. You can stop sharing your screen and we will go into the Q&A portion. If you have a question, please put it in the Q&A box, and we have some pre-submitted questions that we can also talk about. Ingrid, you mentioned a little bit about your history as a patient, and we know that you were diagnosed with DM in 2006, but exactly how did you get involved with myositis research as a patient? Like, what drew you in terms of thinking of the potential impact you might have at having a role in research?
That's a good question. Well, that's many questions in one, basically, but but that's fine. So when I was diagnosed, I was still working full time. So the first thing I did was become a member of a patient organization. Like all of you, you want to know more about this condition. You want to meet other people. So at first, I only started going to the annual patient conferences and read their newsletters because I really wanted to know everything there was to know. And that's different. Some people don't want to know, but I wanted to know like everything, the latest research, what was there. So so and then you bumped in 2006, the community was not as big and myositis was not as hot in research as it is now. So there was just a few names that kept popping up, some like Lise Christopher Stein and Dr. Ingrid Lundberg. There was all the same names popping up again. So I read their articles, and then I was declared unfit to work. Oh, no, then I decided to join the working group just as a member to prepare newsletters and the annual patient conference. And when our chair passed away, sadly, I got to be the new chair. And that was also at the time when I was declared unfit to work. So I had more time on my hands, although I was not very fit because I was in hospital about 10 times per year. So I stopped working for a reason. But the good thing about this is that I can do it in my own time. It's reading emails and it's replying to emails, and you can do that whenever you feel up to it. So, and then this opportunity came when our patient association was asked for a patient representative during a workshop on myositis, which was being held in the Netherlands by the European Neuromuscular Center. And for those wanting to know more about it, look it up, enmc.org. They have done in those years ever since several workshops on myositis. And so I went there as a patient representative, and that's where I met Ingrid Lundberg, and she asked me to become the patient representative on the myositis working group that I just talked about. Of course, I've never heard about I read about the OMERACT group, but I didn't know what was involved. But she said, oh, you'd be a perfect fit, etc. So I joined them at the end of 2015, and I went to their conference in May 2016, and that's where I met all these clinicians and researchers in myositis. And that's when I really got the hang of it. And basically things snowballed from there, because there's not a lot of myositis patients doing what I do, and I love doing it. And I was very curious, and I was eager to learn. So I rolled into the next thing, and now I'm here.
Well, that is an excellent segue, because I do have to say that the slide you shared about what patient research partners have accomplished is incredible, and it's wonderful to see the needle moving. At the same time, it looks a little overwhelming. So if I were considering becoming a PRP, I mean, what does that really look like in my day-to-day life? You touched on this a little bit about how you can do things when you're feeling good, but how does like I'm assuming you're more involved in your role than what we are asking our current patients to do.
Well, I think that maybe you touched upon a really nice topic for another webinar, because there's a lot of things I can say about this, because today I only focus on my personal experience as a patient research partner, which is, if you talk about levels of participation, because there's many different levels of participation, and some would cost you about an hour per month, and some of them would cost you, I mean, I could do this for 40 hours per week easily if I wanted to, which I'm not doing, because if I could, I would still be working and earning an income. But there's different levels. I mean, people can review grant applications, which means if you get sent them in time, a researcher might ask you, what as a patient do you think about this grant application? This is what we're gonna find out. These are the outcomes. And again, there is where our expertise is needed, because maybe they're looking for things that we as a patient don't think is important. So that would be your feedback to this researcher. And if they send you this in time and ask you and give you, for instance, 2 or 3 weeks to look it over and send them your feedback through email or through a Zoom call or whatever, that would mean not so much. It's a one way, so it's your level of influence is not as big, but it's something you can start doing to get to get the hang of it and get the feel of it.
This person wrote in with a question. They have a science background. How can they be part of myositis research?
do you mean a patient with a science background? Well,
Yes.
the good thing about being a patient research partner is that you don't need any specific background at all. Basically, what you need is experiential knowledge of what it is like to be living with myositis. And that we all know, regardless of your scientific background or your economic status or whatever. So that's the value of your expertise. So your background isn't in itself valuable, although I must say that in some areas it is valuable, because I'm now getting more involved in a new topic, which is quite hot, luckily, in myositis, which is mental well-being, and which is, of course, where my experience it's been with my college degrees, but also with 20 years of working and practicing as a counselor in different roles. And so that is expertise I could also use, but it comes all down to the expertise of you as a patient. Is that an answer?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
You, if someone decided to become a part of myositis research, what are the steps they would take to, get that ball rolling?
Well, it all starts, I think, with education, because what you need to know is, you know what it is to have myositis, to live with myositis, or to have someone living with myositis, because also carers could become a patient research partner, or the parents of a JDM patient, for instance. But it all starts with education, and that's why I think a new webinar would be really interesting, because it would start with by knowing what different types of patient involvement there are, because you can like the example of a reviewer, or you can be helping analyzing data when they conducted interviews and they need transcripts and they need to go through all this text that people answer to the questions in interviews. So that's another role you can have. So there's many roles. So the first thing is that you need to know what roles there are, what your level of influence is if you have that role, and if that suits you, because some people don't want that much influence. They just want to be involved, but not like very much involved. And some people want to be involved like a patient research partner, which is about the highest level. And then, of course, and we saw that in Pittsburgh during the global conference on myositis, there are also patients initiating research. So they think like, okay, so this is a big problem in IBM, so we're gonna conduct a study and we're gonna initiate that, and we look for the research, we want to do this. So that's at the top of the level of influence you have, and the most the most high level of patient participation and patient involvement. So there's different levels. So we need all to start at what is really there, what is needed from you as patient research partner, what does it offer, like in terms of what do you offer in terms of expertise and time and effort, but also what kind of influence do you want to have? Because sometimes it's just one way. You give your opinion to the research, but you cannot influence the research. But whereas I proved today that we actually did influence the research.
If I could go to this question, I love the idea of nothing about us without us. Who do I contact to become a patient research partner?
Well, that's a good question, because and Rachel, you and I and Linda talked about this before I was hosting this webinar, because I'm in Europe, and in Europe there's many ways and there's many trainings and courses and education opportunities for patients from different patient organizations to get involved. I must admit, although I'm a member of the medical board of your TMA, I'm not aware, or I'm not familiar with training opportunities or education opportunities within the US or Northern America. So if this is a question from people from the US, then I'm sorry, but I would not know who to turn to, but maybe send a question to you, to the TMA board. because we should start somewhere, and there's so many examples already, for instance in Europe, and it would be such a shame to reinvent the wheel, because there's a lot out there. And OMERACT basically is based in Canada, so we have beautiful training opportunities as well. But of course, OMERACT is very broad for all musculoskeletal conditions, and there's only one myositis working group, so we're covered. But the training opportunities are definitely there.
That is a great segue to this question. Do you have suggestions for how TMA as a patient organization can involve patients as partners in research projects?
I definitely have ideas, but I'm also curious about the ideas that the people who are here have. So the participants in this webinar, because to me, everything I wanted, I did most of the training and education, and there's a lot to choose from. So if you don't have that, it would be a different question. I think, again, and I'm willing to do that with you as a medical advisory board member. I think with the board of the TMA to set up maybe a program, or at least an inventory of how many people are we talking about? How many people want to participate in research? Yes, I think
that would be good.
that's
A survey.
a good starting.
We could survey our TMA members, and maybe let them know of possible roles that we've kind of talked about beforehand once we get to that, just to see the interest. We have people who, volunteers love to, be engaged in ways that provide the most rewarding value for them in accordance with their values. And so research is very important to many of our members, and we can talk about what that might look like. Of course, we'll put it in the list of our projects that are waiting for budgeting, funding, and things like that. But it's always good to be moving in the forward direction. And I see this webinar as the beginning of those conversations. Someone wrote in, I see this OMERACT project is a kind of background project to inform research protocols, maybe. But what about the hard science? How can patients be partners with drug companies doing clinical trials, or bench scientists doing basic research, or investigators doing clinical research?
Well, this is, of course, quality of life study, but there are many patient research partners that are involved in clinical studies or RTCs with drug treatments, etc. One way you could do is, I'm not sure about FDA, but we have EMA in Europe, which is the same thing as the FDA, which approves drugs and the regulation side of things. And the EMA does have this beautiful website on which you can, as a patient, leave your patient details, and you can sort of choose from different options whether you want to be informed about research, if you want to be involved in clinical trials, if you want to be involved in surveys about drugs and drug design or design of studies, etc. So I'm not sure if FDA has that, but it would be well worth a look. I might suspect they have that. And I think, again, if we would be able to set up some sort of PRP pool or a group of PRPs within TMA, I would say that researchers doing drug treatments and getting grants from TMA, for instance, that they could maybe pick and choose from that database of patients who want to be involved. That could be a future project as well.
Moving to our live Q&A, we have someone that's asking, how does this work that you've done on outcome measures transfer to research related to developing treatments or clinical trials or research to understand the cause of myositis?
That's an entire different question, the cause of myositis, because that would be about disease mechanism and disease cause and natural history of studies, etc. So that would be more things that you would find in, for instance, a registry, a myositis registry. That's where they keep those data and those details. Of course, also their patient involvement is needed, but is needed and appreciated, I know. The thing is, like, our study is on quality of life, so there's nothing in there about the disease cause, or so it's not related to basic science at all. But there are projects, and I don't have the time to go into them now, but there are many projects like more to the basic side of myositis. But the thing is that with basic research, you know, with the lab results and the mice and the laboratory stuff, it's really scientific, it's really specialized work, and it means it requires a lot of skills that most patient research partners would not have. So the best they could do is be part of the design of the study. I've been part of a study like that from the beginning in the design, and the laboratory people, they talked to me what they were on about. It was with a three-dimensional muscle thing. And so they talked me through the project in really lay language, you can imagine. And I could ask questions and ask them how this is related to me in everyday life as a patient. And they said, well, we want to know how this three-dimensional muscle is working. And so we're going to test this, this, and this. And so I commented on some of the things they were saying. And so it's different, but it can be done again.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of our webinar today. We really appreciate the work that you are doing, and we acknowledge the difficulty in sometimes doing that work while you're also managing a chronic illness. And so thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you to the audience for tuning in today. Please join us for our next webinar. It'll be September 24th, Ask the Doc with Dr. Louise Diedrichsen. And before that, we will be in Baltimore for the conference. And if you are interested in registering for that, we are still accepting registrations, and you can register at www.myositis.org. And that is it for me. I will send you the emails, people that wanted that. So, okay. All right, everybody. Thank you.
Have a good
have a
summer.
great day.
Thank you. See ya. Bye.